Good evening. We'll call the council meeting to order, the February 19th council meeting. We're having a meeting tonight versus our normal Monday last night. First we'll have the prayer led by Councilman Bill Lubert, and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings that we received every day and so much take for granted. Among them are clean water, clean air, warm and safe places to live, and an abundance of food and drink. Help us to remember that we and our surroundings are your creation, and all the things that we achieve have their origin in you. Keep us humble and ever mindful that we are all your children. Bless those who dedicate themselves to maintaining law and order and our safety. Grant special blessing and comfort to those who have been most affected by the tornadoes and snowstorms that have occurred recently. Help those who are struggling with difficult relationships. Grant wisdom and courage to us as we face our duties this evening. God bless us all. God bless America. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll have roll call, please.
Bray.
Here.
Carroll. Henry.
Here.
Lubert.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Pope.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Schulte.
Here.
Scrivener.
Here.
Weber.
Here. First, we'll have a proclamation presented by Michelle Gleba.
Thank you. Standing beside me tonight is Cadet LaShundra Taliaferro with Lincoln University's ROTC program. On behalf of the program, she will be accepting a proclamation that honors the memory of a notable member of Jefferson City history, military history, and American history. Throughout the year, the City of Jefferson recognizes the many achievements and contributions by citizens to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. In honor of Black History Month, we would like to pay tribute to Cathay Williams, who earned her way into record books of military history as the only known and documented female Buffalo soldier. Cathay was born a slave in Jackson County, Missouri, and moved to Jefferson City with her family and master as a small child. In 1862, as Union soldiers moved through Jefferson City during the Civil War, several slaves, including Cathay, were confiscated as contraband. She served as a cook and a laundress for the Union Army and persevered in military life to the greatest extent a woman could. On November 15, 1866, she enlisted in the U.S. Army using the name William Cathay. She performed regular duties that others in the company did, such as working garrison duty or guarding railroads. Through this special proclamation being presented to Lincoln University's ROTC program, the City of Jefferson commends the efforts of Cathay Williams for her bravery, perseverance, and the example she has set for all of us today.
Hi, my name is LaShundra Taliaferro. I would like to say thank you for honoring me, letting me accept this award. And I would like to talk a little bit about myself, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm from Lincoln University. I'm a wellness major. I enrolled in Lincoln University on an Army ROTC scholarship, and I have been here quite a while. I'm trying to commission soon. And I also like to say Lincoln University Army ROTC program have started in 1950, and they have commissioned 700 lieutenants, and 3 of them becoming generals. And that's all I like to say.
Thank you. participated 1 year in the Lincoln ROTC. Didn't make it past that, but it's a good program, and thank you all for being here, and congratulations. Thank you. Next, we'll have introduction of some new police personnel. Captain Sonova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two people that were recently hired with the police department. One of them couldn't be here tonight because of a prior commitment. That's Charlie St. Ange is a new communications operator. We do have Ethan Starr here. Ethan is a new animal control officer. Started Monday. He's originally from Maryville, Missouri. He graduated from California High School and then attended Nichols Career Center, where he got his HVAC heating and cooling degree. He's an avid outdoorsman, and when he's not spending time with his wife and three young girls, he's hunting, fishing, or trapping. That'll help him when the girls start dating. So,
All right, welcome, and glad to have you join our staff, and you know, we really appreciate all the effort that all of our police and animal control and all of our departments that we have. We have a good team here, and we're glad that you are joining us. Thank you. There's no public hearings tonight. Minutes and reports are received and filed with the city clerk. We have the Public Safety Committee from November 1st, 2012, the Campo Technical Committee, January 3rd, 2013, Police Personnel Board, January 3rd, 2013, Historic Preservation Commission, November 13th, 2012, and January 8th, 2013, and the Board of Adjustment, January 8th, 2013. Council committee reports. First, we'll have the Administration Committee. This committee is chaired by Councilwoman Carroll, and she is not with us tonight. And Councilman Henry, I think, is going to give a brief update.
Thank you. We haven't had any admin committee meetings since our last council meeting. Our next admin meeting will be Wednesday, February 27th at 8 a.m.
Thank you. Next will be our Finance Committee Chairman, Mr. Sean Schulte.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met this morning. We discussed the sales tax report, lodging tax report. We had a follow-up on where we were at with the audit. We received and discussed our quarterly financial report, which is a new report that's being provided to the council, so I'd encourage all council members to take a look at that report. It includes every line item within the budget, shows what the budgeted amount is for this year as long as year-to-date expenditures. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. In that same line, we looked at the overall budget procedures for this upcoming year and a spreadsheet that shows the format for that budget, which is going to follow the same information that is contained in that quarterly report. It will give us 5 years of actual expense and revenue history, along with the city administrator's proposed budget, the mayor's proposed budget, and then ultimately the council's approved budget. And then we talked about amendments to the JCTV contract. Our next meeting is March 26th on a Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. across the hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Schulte. The next committee is Public Safety Committee, chaired by Dr. Brian Pope.
The Public Safety Committee will meet at 8 a.m. on Thursday, February 28th.
Okay. Next is Public Works and Planning Committee, chaired by Councilman Bob Scrivener.
Thank you. The Public Works and Planning Committee will meet next Thursday, this coming Thursday, across the hall at 7:30 a.m. The agenda includes discussion of bids for Mulberry Street apartment demolition, agreement with Cole County for joint capital improvement projects, agreement with Cole County to fund the hazardous waste program, household hazardous waste program, renewal of the yard waste compost contract, an update on airport runway projects, and the Old Town budget, and a couple other items. so I'm gonna have another busy
Sound like a
agenda, Bob.
busy morning. Hopefully, we don't have ice. Okay, any other committee council liaison? Councilman Larry Henry?
JCTV steering committee had actually met this past February 14th. The station manager, Gloria Enlow, she actually went over some of the latest details for the Strike a Chord fundraiser for JCTV. Again, that fundraiser is going to be at the President's Mansion on February 28th from 5:30 to 8:30. We would, urge all community support that we can get. And again, seeking sponsorships. We have received some donations from some area businesses, but we would like to continue to get community supports for JCTV. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Henry. There's no appointments for the mayor tonight. We have no presentations from staff consultants or invited guests. Do we have any announcements by the council and staff? Any announcements?
Just a reminder that we have a conference committee or council meeting on the conference center Thursday.
At 4 o'clock?
Yes, 4 o'clock.
Okay. Any other announcements? Seeing none, presentations from the gallery on specific bills. No one has signed up under that section. Under the consent agenda, we have the minutes of the council meetings, January 31 and February 4. Would there be a motion to approve the?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Bids over 50,000, bid number 2650 has been removed. Bills introduced, and this may be a first. We have none. Is that a first? First that I remember. Have no new bills introduced tonight. Bills pending, 2012-135, third reading.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, submitting a proposed amendment to the charter of the City of Jefferson to allow elections in February and all other dates allowed in Missouri statutes.
Councilman Bray.
I move to place Bill 135 on the informal calendar.
Okay, is there a second? Due to the fact that Mr. Bray is not the sponsor of the bill, it will need 6 votes to place this on the informal calendar. Councilman Bray.
Yeah, as speaker of the motion, maker of the motion, I will explain that Carrie Carroll cannot be here tonight, and in her absence, she has asked me to place this on the informal calendar.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries to put on the informal calendar. Bill number 2012-136.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, submitting a proposed amendment to the charter of the City of Jefferson to a vote of the citizens of the City of Jefferson to eliminate primary elections.
Councilman Bray.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to place Bill 136 on the informal calendar.
Is there a second? Purpose being the same.
And then again, Carrie's out of town and asked that I place this on the informal calendar in her absence. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. 2012-137, third reading.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a parking lease agreement with Welcome In Again, LLC, for the lease of the parking lot known as Lot 31.
Roger Swartz.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We've had a request from the group that's redeveloping the Welcome In, as Welcome In Again, to lease this lot from us. This is down off of Madison Street, south of Dunklin. There's 32 spaces in this lot, and they would like to lease it for the whole year for their future employees and future business clients. And we'd recommend approval.
Any questions? Councilman Pope.
Roger, are they able to sublease any of these spaces?
That would be up to them. They have not discussed that with us, but
But they do not, it is not written into the document that they could or they couldn't. Or could they, is my question.
I think they could. I don't think there's anything that would prohibit them from doing that.
Last time you told us there were it's $1,800 per year,
Right.
and there were 32 spots. Now, that comes up to $4.68 a spot per month. And what's our average rental around the city in those kind of lots?
Well, that would be one of our very cheapest, because today we don't have any of those spots leased. There's one guy that is using it on a part-time basis to park his lawn equipment there while he's doing lawn business, but other than that, no one's using that. As far as other lots, the lower prices generally are in the $25 to $30 per space, but those are generally here in the downtown area too.
It seems like to me it would be appropriate if we would specify that they couldn't sublease without the approval of the parking authority. Does that make sense? If I made that motion, would there be a second? Okay. For discussion purposes, it seems like a very, I've rented a lot of parking over the years downtown, all the years, and boy, $4 or even in that location, $4.68 is. Do you generate $1,800 a year on that lot now?
No.
Okay. What sort of
Our
revenue?
income is
Nothing.
nothing basically
Okay.
today.
And we rent it out. What is our current rent for that lot on a monthly basis?
We were asking $10.
Okay. I see. Okay.
Councilman Breck?
Roger, I don't know a lot about this project, but that business has not been open for quite a while. And I think there are some new people coming in and leasing it from the owners. And I don't know who would, I think they're putting in a kitchen and expanding the business and making investing quite a bit of money in it, it looks like to me, and it sounds like so. Hopefully with this parking, that'll get them off to a good start.
It's my understanding that they want to open this as a restaurant and bar that would be open at lunchtime and in the evening, but they are hoping to serve a fairly significant lunch crowd. That is one of their primary hopes, I believe.
Councilman Scrivener?
Roger, I think at the end of your description of the lease, you indicated, or you said for a year. Is this a 1-year lease? Is this a lease with renewals, or?
It is eligible to be renewed, and there is a clause in here that the price does escalate 3% on renewals.
And in all likelihood, kind of following Ralph's theme, if they didn't have the ability to secure parking, would they even be able to open? I guess they could utilize on-street parking. Is there any minimum, Janice, that requirement for them to be able to open without parking?
Well, it's an existing business, and we wouldn't necessarily require them to secure additional parking, but they want parking available for their employees and their patrons, so they've chosen to go this route.
Okay. Well, the only reason that I would be even slightly in favor, I guess, of having the say over subleasing would just, again, I try to be consistent in everything, and I would think that, you know, not just considering this particular lease, but considering future parking leases around the city, I would just think that would be something that we would want to be able to at least be able to sign off on. I just think it ought to be a clause in the lease, even though it may be nothing more than just a rubber stamp. I still think it probably ought to be there.
I just wanted to clarify, it was actually 5% increase, and it's a 1-year lease with 3 renewals, and we could certainly put in the sublease.
Councilman Pope, you want to make
As
that
a follow-up, is the term, the initial lease 1 or 2 years?
I think it's
You're right, it's January 1st
It's 2
through,
years.
through December
and it has
31st.
4 3-year options.
I'm sorry, you're right. I
So it's
misread
a,
that.
so it's a 12 plus 2, it's a 14-year lease. With the possibility of a 5% increase each renewal. So on the 3-year terms, it's 5% divided by 3, which gives you the annual increase. So anyway, I would like to see us just simply figure out a way to safeguard our investment.
Drew, you got some additional?
The only thing I would say is the termination clause is 6 months prior, and Britt kind of talked to him initially. I think they were looking for a long-term ability because of their investment, a possibility of a long-term lease because of their investment.
Councilman Scrivener?
I think you may have answered my question. So there is the ability for the city, even though it's a long-term lease, there's the ability for the city to terminate that lease with 6 months?
6 months prior notice.
Is it for cause or is it for any reason?
No, any reason.
Okay, so if, 14 years from now, that parking situation down there could be the same as the parking situation uptown. We might be struggling
Sure.
to find, and if we're leasing those spaces for $5 a spot or something, that wouldn't be the best agreement we ever entered into.
Yeah.
Councilman Pope?
And there are an additional 2 buildings there right across the street from it, one quite large one that's being aggressively marketed right now, and that parking could be very important for that building also. And if, for instance, this were not used fully, we would want to be able to offer this incentive to other developers possibly. So I don't know how to correct this, but I would like to see us make an effort to my initial motion, I would be happy to withdraw if we come up with something that would be more appropriate. But if we would have the control of not allowing them to sublet it, that would certainly give us some control over them then renting it for $10 a month.
Right.
So I'm open for suggestions. That motion at least would satisfy me.
Is that, you offered that as amendment?
Well, my original motion was that
No subletting?
that the subletting would be at the discretion of the city.
Would there be a second to that?
And Bob had seconded
You
that.
second, okay. We have a motion on the floor then. Any discussion regarding to the motion? Okay. First, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Do we need a roll call? No. Okay. So now we have 2012-137 as amended. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Bray,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Lubert,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Pope,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Weber.
Aye. Okay, very good. Next bill, 2012-138.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri vacating and discontinuing the right-of-way on Morris Avenue and Elizabeth Street.
Mr. Roger Swartz again.
This is a portion of right-of-way that was dedicated for Morris Avenue. The roadway was never built. This is kind of west of Myrtle. Helias High School is looking at trying to do an expansion in this area, and they are requesting that we vacate this right-of-way. We are keeping an easement here for utilities that are located in this right-of-way, but staff has reviewed this. It's been reviewed by the Public Works and Planning Committee, and it is recommended to be approved.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Schulte.
Mr. Schwartz, it's my understanding that Helias and the Housing Authority have worked out an agreement to maintain their entrance into their parking lot off of that little street.
Right, the Housing Authority owns the property adjacent to this, and yes, that's my understanding, is they have a working agreement between them.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte. Scrivener.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Motion carries. Bill carries. Next, we have 2012-139.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Section 19401, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule W, Snow Routes of the Code of the City of Jefferson pertaining to various streets in Jefferson City.
Mr. Roger Schwartz.
Thank you, and we're bringing the map up on the screen. This is an ordinance that was last updated in 1987, and the city changed quite a bit since that time. We've built a number of roads, and traffic patterns have certainly increased throughout the city. So what we've done is try to take a look at what are the highest priority routes that serve the various areas of the city, and to try to make sure that we have the most heavily traveled routes, as well as covered all of the areas that the city has expanded with the priority routes for snow removal. Now, this is what we want to do for snow removal, but this ordinance also sets up that these would be the priority routes for any emergency situation, whether we had a tornado that had a lot of downed trees or something like that. These would be the routes that we would clear first to get people moving around the city again, and to get traffic moving. So we tried to take a look at this map, and this ordinance actually was amended at the last meeting to add a couple of more routes, and at this time we think we've got a pretty comprehensive map that includes all areas of the city that are important and in getting people to and from where they need to be. So at this point we would recommend approval.
Any questions, discussions? The bill was substituted at our last meeting, so it would be as substituted. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Third reading of Bill 2012-140.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by revising the downtown parking accommodation program.
Mr. Roger Schwartz.
Thank you again. This is the downtown residential parking. We currently have downtown residential parking for the Wymore Apartments, and we're trying to expand that into the downtown area. There were some permits issued prior in the downtown, but there was no ordinance that actually covered them, so we're trying to get those all under permit. And what this ordinance does is allows all the existing folks who have one of these existing permits to continue in the program. This first picture that you see here is the current location where the Wymore Apartments are, and the area that they're allowed to park on, and the cost for their permits is $20 per month. The next one you see here in yellow, this location is what we're calling the West High Street zone. So anyone that lives in that area on High Street could park at a metered location, or they could park on lots 1 or 8 at a metered spot, and use any of those metered spots during the day. And then there's a second location in the downtown area that's we're calling the Central Zone. And again, if you lived in that area, you could park at any of the meters on those streets, as well as in the lots number 10, lot 2, or lot 3. This one does have a lot of parking meters. There's over 150 parking meters in this area, so there is a lot of availability. The recommendation is to have the cost of these at $20 as well, the same as what the Wymore is. And we've also added a clause in here that would not allow these folks to park for long periods of time in front of a business, so that it wouldn't create a hardship on an individual business. If we have problems with that, that would be a way of revoking their downtown parking permit. And then we know there are times that the downtown is very busy, so we've created an overflow zone, which is shown here down on McCarty Street and then on Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. They could park in this area as an overflow, or if they didn't want to pay the $20 for downtown, we would issue them a permit in this area for $10 a month. We think this is a good way to try to expand and try to encourage folks to live in the downtown area, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Councilman Ray.
Roger, I would like to let everyone know that you and your staff has done a lot of work on this bill, and started several months ago, and it's taken this long because for the purpose of getting as much input as possible from those people that would be most affected, and that's been very successful. A lot of people, at this time, a lot of folks downtown, the tenants, business owners, landlords, has given this the thumb up and has bought into it. And with the passage of this tonight, it will allow for downtown residential parking to continue downtown. Thank you very much for all your help, yours and your staff.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Holovich, then Councilman Luke.
I want to recognize Councilman Bray for his work in vetting this at all levels, and the outstanding work of city staff in providing us solutions that we could take to committees. And the Downtown Association, I know, had a special presentation on it, and I think it's a good way to present a bill to walk it up and down the streets as Councilman Bray had. Just want to recognize him for his efforts.
Do we want to name this the Bray parking bill? Councilman Luber.
If I'm remembering right, Roger, the $20 is something like an average amount of money that we collect in a month's time off of a meter if it's regularly plugged and used?
Yeah, Bill, if you could back up to the previous two slides there. Hang on, you went too far. Advance one. There you go. When you look in the west zone here, I can't read the number here, but that's it seemed like it was around $25 is what that average was. There was a lot of debate about what the cost should be for these permits. In the end, we reached a solution that we thought was kind of in the middle, in that trying to encourage people to live downtown. It's the same as the Wymore amount, and these folks are going to be bringing us almost as much money as what we're receiving on those meters today on these lots. So it's very close, and we think it's a reasonable way to encourage development.
I just wanted to make the point that that $20 was not just pulled out of the air, that there was some basis of some thought went behind that, and it's based on factual things.
Right.
Any other discussion? Councilman Scrivener.
While we're handing, excuse me, while we're handing out kudos, I'd just like to thank staff and Ralph and others that were involved that actually made the effort to arrive at a compromise that as Roger said, really kind of meets both needs. The city needs to protect the value of its parking because that is an asset, and the city, that's what funds future expenditures on additional parking. And so we have to protect that value. It's really easy to make a case that we should just give that away, and I applaud you, Ralph, for sticking to your guns and making the case and actually changing some minds about what we ought to get for that parking. And so I think it's a job well done, and I think this is a bill that we can all, no one got everything they wanted, and usually that makes for the best bill. It's a true compromise.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Third reading of 2012-141.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by regulating the solicitation of contributions and employment and the sale of merchandise on highways and streets.
City Attorney, Mr. Drew Hilper.
Thank you. This would enact a bill which was in the code for about 10 years and then accidentally deleted a year or so ago. It prohibits the sale of goods on the streets on 50, 54, 63, Ellis, 179, and the intersections there too. It prohibits solicitation there without a permit. I know people often ask me about the people who are begging for money on those streets, and that does have some constitutional protection to it, but it does give way to traffic concerns. We don't want anybody hurt. That's really the purpose of this bill.
Questions? Councilman Pope.
So then, can we expect these people to be doing this with a permit if they come down to file for a permit?
I would, you're speaking of the people begging essentially.
Yes.
I do not believe they would get a permit. I agree with that.
What grounds would there be for a permit?
Well, they would not be eligible for the permit because you have to be a charitable, civic, religious, or fraternal organization. The folks who do it would be prohibited from doing it, but once they're on the street and on the right of way on those particular locations. Is there a question about constitutional right to be there? Well, not because of because the traffic concerns would trump that. They could be on the road asking, but once they step into traffic, there's a legitimate safety issue.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Third reading on 2012-142.
An ordinance amending the 2012-2013 budget, Appendix A, Personnel Schedule of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by combining authorized positions within the Department of Public Works Engineering Division.
Ms. Gilstrow.
Thank you. This ordinance would combine the authorized positions within the engineering division. Currently, there are 2 civil engineer 1 positions and 2 civil engineer 2 positions that are authorized in the budget. If passed, this would allow a total of 4 civil engineer positions. It would allow for a career development program so that new employees could be brought in at the 1 level. Once they gain years of experience, skill sets, obtain their professional engineer license, they would be eligible to move to the civil engineer 2 position. So, it does not increase the number of positions.
Questions? Councilman Pope.
Will this take place, the fiscal effect of this, will it take place after next year's budget has been approved? Or will this fiscal amount, will the increase could be reflected in this year's budget that has been not funded? We funded these positions as 1s and 2s. So if passed, and we then had 4 2s, that would be the fiscal impact. Has that been, where in the budget is that coming from?
Right, the positions were budgeted as they were filled last year. So if currently there are 2 civil engineer 1s, so any budget impact that would be higher would be if either of those 2 were moved up to a civil engineer 2 position, then they could receive increases of up to 10%. Likewise, we could see the savings if a vacancy, if a civil engineer 2 left, we would bring somebody in as a civil engineer 1. So it could have the opposite effect.
Councilman Scrivener.
Gail, do you know what the salary scale is for a 1 versus a 2?
There are 2 pay ranges apart, and each pay range is separated by 5%. So there's a 10% difference between the minimum of the civil engineer 1 position and the minimum of the civil engineer 2 position.
Do the 2 scales overlap? Does a high range of a 1, is it more than the low range of a 2?
Yes, there's 10% difference between the 2, the minimums and the maximums, and each range is 50%. So I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what those ranges are.
Is there someone
so,
who
there is quite a bit of overlap between the 2.
Is there someone currently employed that's a 1 that's eligible to become a 2?
There is one, yes, and there's another one, because both of our civil engineer 1s have been with the city for a number of years. One has obtained her PE. The other one I know has been working on it, but I don't believe has obtained it yet.
And you say it could be up to a 10% increase, so might it be less?
Yes.
What would be the norm?
Normally promotional increases are usually, well, it really depends on the positions, but probably those positions probably would get a 10% because there's a 10% difference between the minimums of the 2 ranges.
Okay.
Councilman Schulte.
What is the difference in tasks that are assigned to an engineer 1 and an engineer 2?
My understanding is it's the complexity of the work. I would let Roger, if he wants to expand on that any.
Yeah, it truly is the complexity issue. Obviously, once if you have a new engineer coming in, you start them out with much easier type projects to work on or to design. The one candidate we have that has her professional engineer license just completed the design on the East McCarty project, so a fairly complicated project in the city that has lots of driveways and lots of grade issues to deal with and property owner issues. So she's very capable of handling just about any type of project the city has today, and obviously she wasn't capable of doing that when she first came here. So that experience and knowledge that has been gained is something that allows the city not to have to go out to a consultant in some cases for more complicated projects, but and it really now depends on what our workload is in-house, but we're capable of designing most projects now today.
So there is the opportunity or the possibility that we could end up with 4 engineer 2 positions. And then some of those, and then those individuals would be doing work that an engineer 1 person could be doing.
Yes, that possibility does exist if they all stay, and they would do all the work, whether it's engineer 1 or 2 level,
Okay.
basically.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Holovich.
Just follow-up question on the fiscal information. In our reading here, it says there will be no fiscal impact to implement this program. Does that mean until budget is approved, or by virtue of when you get an engineer 2, then you will automatically have a fiscal impact?
Right, just passing this, there's not going to be any fiscal impact. The only time you'd have fiscal impact is if a civil engineer 1 is promoted to a 2, or if a 2 leaves and you hire somebody in down at the lower level at the 1 level. So that's the only time you would have an impact.
Well,
But that, we already have our budget approved, so that couldn't happen until the next fiscal year, is that correct? Or otherwise, we wouldn't have it budgeted position, or budgeted money for that position.
Well, if the department if the person was promoted up during this fiscal year, the department would have to find a way to cover that.
Within the approved budget?
Yes, within the approved budget, absolutely.
Councilman Scrivener.
I will say this, you know, there's arguments to be made on both sides. As Councilman Schulte pointed out, you would think that the reason you have 2s and 1s is because there's different kinds of work in there, but there's also the argument to be made that 1s and 2s allow you to hire people that have less training and less experience and perhaps no certification. They don't have an engineer's license, but they do have engineer education. And if you want to have a situation where as people become experienced and you don't have any way to you know, promote them to a position that their training and their licensing justifies, then you end up losing those people and you end up having turnover. And so while I can certainly sympathize and understand both sides of the argument, I also think that in order to be able to, especially in a small department where you only have 4 people to begin with, I could see where it would be a good management tool to be able to, as you train people and as you invest in their training and their education, what have you, to be able to keep them and have longevity down there. I could see where that could be of a benefit and a value to the city. I don't know, Gail, what 10% means. I mean, I hate it when we deal in percentages rather than in numbers, because 10% of a big number is a lot of money. So I guess I'd be curious just what 10% would mean, although, as Rick, Councilman Mahalovich pointed out, that it's not going to affect the budgeted amount this year. So I suppose in reality there isn't a fiscal impact if you're taking budgeted funds and finding a way to make that work. But I think based on my conversations with Roger and the explanation that he has given me, this is something I'm going to support, even though like I said, I can understand both sides of the argument.
Councilman Pope, then Councilman Luber.
I completely agree with you, Councilman Scrivener. I believe the concept we have here is that we're working to create a career development process. And that I can agree with completely. To allow us to have potentially 4 PEs in that design department along with Roger and with Matt, and that would give us a total of potentially how many in the department?
We currently have 6, believe it or not.
Okay.
Today.
And that'd be a fine thing to do that. I believe the real question here that we're debating, and I would really like to have the input from our finance chairman, is a fiscal question. Now, it's been stated by our HR person that within the current budget, we would not be asked if one of these ones went to 2 to add more money to that, your fund.
Right.
So that wouldn't affect this year, other than that would be money that wouldn't be spent on materials or something. No, okay. But the point is, if finance is happy with this, I would be happy, but it's a finance question for this year's budget. If I'm not going to offer the amendment, but if there would be a substitute that would say, so long as there's no fiscal impact this year, it would be perfect. But that's not what the bill says, and I don't know that you're not going to come back and ask for another $5,000 to fund a 1 going to a 2 in this particular budget. So that's my concern, and I'd like to hear something from Councilman Schulte about his thoughts about that too.
Councilman Luber, then we'll ask Councilman Schulte to respond.
I was wanting to question whether the engineer group, do they cross over into wastewater and stormwater and streets and all?
Primarily, the engineering folks are working in the street department. We do very little work for wastewater. We do try to review their plans that they develop to ensure that they meet the city standards that we've set up, because typically the wastewater department does work under the streets, so they have to do street repairs when they do that work. So we do review the plans that are developed by wastewater, but there's very little work that we do as far as actual design for the wastewater department.
Gail?
If I could just reply to Councilman Pope for just a second, if you don't mind. I just wanted to point out that we do have the same career development program set up within the city, both in the police department for our police officers and in a number of departments for our maintenance positions. And anytime somebody is moved up, we do not come to council and ask for additional funding for those positions. If we don't have the money in the budget to do it, we don't move them up. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. So if you were concerned that we'd be coming back this year in a month or two and asking for $5,000, we would not be doing that.
Councilman Schulte?
I don't think the question is, I mean, staff has indicated that they will not ask for a supplemental appropriation to handle 2 engineer 1s to 2 engineer and 2 engineer 2s if they were to move somebody from the engineering 1 classification to a 2. But I would assume that next year's budget that they would ask for potentially 4 engineer 2s in the event that they were to have to payroll for engineer 2 positions. If there's one individual that's eligible to move up now, how will the difference in cost be included in next year's budget if they don't ask for an increase? And Roger and Gail can answer that. I mean, there's a 10% difference in pay. That money's got to come from someplace in next year's budget.
Councilman Scrivener?
Roger, if you have 4 licensed engineers and 4 experienced employees in your street design department, and assuming that there's money to build some streets next year or have some projects of one kind or another, would having the extra experience and licensing permit you to design more jobs in-house and have fewer jobs done by consultants? And as a rule, can you design jobs in-house for less than what you can have a consultant or an outside firm do them?
Well, certainly in-house design is much less expensive than hiring a consultant. And today, our staff is experienced enough that we can take on any type of project the city has needs for design on the street side. Whether we need a consultant today really depends on what our workload is, and right now our workload is not that significant that we've had to go out and get any additional help from consultants. And from what the budget's looking like going forward, we're not anticipating needing to do any of that either. So I'll try to get back to Sean's question. You know, today, if it's personnel dollars, it stays in personnel. If it's materials dollars, it stays in materials. We can't move that money back and forth. The finance rules don't allow us to do that. So the only way that we could come up with money is we have to either use less personnel money somewhere within the budget to be able to promote someone, or do with less people. That's the only way we can come up with the money to actually try to implement something like this.
Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
No.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Bray,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Lubert,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Pope,
No.
Motion carries. Next, we have 2012-143. I'm the sponsor of that bill, and I wish to withdraw that bill. I think our intentions was good, but I think the process could have been better. And so therefore, I'm withdrawing 2012-143. Item 18, we have no resolutions. Item 19, presentations from the gallery on other topics. We have two people who have signed up. Mr. John O'Rear. Is John with us? Don't see John. Okay, next we have a former councilman from the First Ward, Mr. Dick Groner. Dick, please state your address and...
I'm Richard Groner. I live at 425 Cedar Creek Court in Jefferson City. If you look at national statistics, you will find that the assets of old people mostly revolve around their houses. Now it appears to me you found a way to steal that from them. I bought some properties long time before you made your rules, and I was living up to the rules of the time, and now you want me to pay you money every month for some properties that I own that don't have an electric or gas or water hookup. I bought 9 pieces of property in one block, and my friend owns 5 pieces in that same block, and we've got an unwritten agreement. We're going to develop it together. But you're making me pay under some rule you passed that says if I don't have a water meter or electric meter or something, I got to pay you so much money a month, and I found this out just a little while ago. I think that's an outrageous rule. I did my thing before you ever did your thing, and I did it according to the rules at the time. I can take one building down now a year, which I've been doing, and I've got 5 buildings that have been demolished and are just land. I got 4 left to go. But the federal government in their rules state if I do something, I'm in violation of the asbestos rule. And I was taking one building down a year, and I could comply with their rules. Now they've changed the rules, and I don't even know what they say, because if I'm an aggregator of property within the city, that puts me somewhere else, and they didn't tell me where that somewhere else was. But if I have to hire some guy in white suits to go in there and tear those buildings down because the asbestos rule is going to cost me a lot of money. But what I'm objecting to basically is that you're taxing me, you're making me pay money to you just because I have a building there that doesn't have electricity to it. I bought that property a long time ago. I plan to do what I'm doing, and I've been doing it, and now I'm sort of hung up, and I object to your rule. Now, you can stonewall me if you want to, but I guess suggest you don't.
Any questions of Mr. Gruner? Councilman Pope.
Is it a flat fee, or is it varied by property, or what?
It's a fee, I assume, every month, but I have to pay you a fee every month.
Does that come on a tax bill?
No, it just comes, some rule you made up somewhere,
Okay,
and you probably voted for it.
I'm sure I did. Trying to get along. Well, maybe we'll have a chance to ask questions about this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's always good to have former councilman with us, Mr. Groner. Thank you for being with us. Mr. Rear, is he hadn't made it? Okay. Next, council and staff discussions of presentation topics. Councilman Scrivener.
I presume that Richard was referring to the abandoned building.
Yes.
Janice, why don't you, since that's kind of your bailiwick, why don't you give us an overview of what that
Okay.
is?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Some years ago, the council passed an ordinance requiring owners of properties which are identified as abandoned to register and to pay a monthly fee. And we've gone through the first round of properties. 30 properties were identified. We've identified a total of more than 90 properties that meet the definition of abandoned buildings. Mr. Groner's property was in that first group of 30 that we notified as meeting those definitions, and so we have asked him to register those properties as abandoned and to pay the fees that are associated and identified in the ordinance.
Councilman Scriver.
Could you tell us what defines an abandoned property and what the fee is?
Sure. It has to meet at least 2 of the following definitions in addition to being unoccupied for a period of at least 90 consecutive days. The property is not secured. It's fire damaged to an extent that prohibits safe human occupancy. It's the site of loitering or vagrancy, or it demonstrates the lack of property maintenance and upkeep as evidenced by 1 or more violations of the city code. It has been boarded up for at least 90 days, has taxes in arrears to the city for a period of exceeding 365 days, or has water and or electricity that has been disconnected, or is structurally unsound, or is a potential hazard or danger to persons.
Okay, and how much is the fee?
The registration fee is, Mr. Groner will know this, $50. And then there's also a monthly fee that's about $30 a month.
Per property?
Per property.
Wow. And the why this is a good thing?
Well, it's a good thing from the city's perspective because we know which properties need attention. It also encourages property owners to address the conditions that cause the property to be placed on the abandoned building list. It also encourages them to either demolish it if the building is indeed beyond repair, or it encourages them to make some progress toward rehabilitating it, or perhaps selling it to someone who intends to do either of those 2 things.
Thank you.
Councilman Bray, then Councilman Pope.
I can offer just a little bit of insight also. I've learned of situations in which there is an abandoned building or 2 within a block, a residential street, residential neighborhood, and 1 or 2 buildings left vacant or not maintained or in disrepair or not in code compliance. People have brought to my attention how it detracts from their residential street and brings down the property values and becomes a distraction in the neighborhood. And I believe that, and so I have had people requesting that the city to do what they can to try to get buildings brought into code compliance. And I think this is an attempt to try to work with those owners to make progress along those lines.
Can I answer your question? I would have had those buildings all torn down already if I wouldn't be concerned about paying the removal of asbestos by people in the city. So you got me hung up.
Councilman Pope.
I was going to ask either the clerk or our council the year in which we passed that. Or Janice.
It looks like 2007.
Was it in between, 2009?
It was longer ago than that. I was looking at this. I don't see the original date of passage.
Between
on-
4 and 6?
It looks like 9/4/2007.
2007, okay. And
you.
we're getting around now to getting with the program.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Janice. It's time.
Councilman Bray, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. Comments like yours will help, as I'm sure, staff will take note, council members will take note and try to try to improve on the process. You brought up some good points, and if the process can be improved, I'm sure that the staff and the council would like to work towards that.
I'd like you to give me some leeway. I bought this stuff before you made the rules. Okay, you changed the rules on me after I bought my property.
Well, and not speaking about your properties, is I have no idea what properties you have or how many you have.
I'll show them to you if you want to see them, but I've been tearing them down. I got 5 of them tore down.
Mhm.
I got 4 more to go.
Well, I know I have a neighbor. I can think of a neighborhood just off the top of my head that is hoping that that houses don't have to get torn down in their neighborhood. They're hoping that they will be maintained so they don't have to be torn down.
I bought it for the land. I didn't buy it.
Nathan, did you,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong date. It's August 1st, 2011 was the final amendment to this.
Yeah, that was an amendment. That's not when it was passed.
The original passage was when Ron Medine was on the council.
okay, let's move on. Any new business to come before the council? Councilman Scribner.
I don't know if this is necessarily new business, but I did want to make a comment about the bill that you withdrew tonight. I hope that as a council, we will not kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater here in terms of the idea of reorganization. I'm not sure that we went about it in the right way. A lot of people in the community have told us that we didn't go about it in the right way. But the idea of reorganization is not that bad an idea. That right now there are numerous department directors that report to the city administrator, and probably more than he really should have direct reporting to him. And if you look around at numerous businesses, they have a structure similar to what we were looking at in terms of creating a finance division, if you will, and those departments that we were going to put under that finance division are generally grouped that way in businesses as well. And so while I think it deserves to go through the vetting process of the committees and so on and so forth, I would hope that we would go ahead and at least explore the idea of reorganization, and whether it's a finance director that ends up as the director of that division, if you will, or whatever terminology would be correct. I'm not sure even what's the correct terminology, but the idea of reorganization is not a bad idea in my mind. And so I hope that we don't just drop this because I think it could help the city be more efficient, and it deserves exploration. And so that's my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Any other new business? Unfinished business? We do have to approve the closed session minutes of February 11th, 2013. Roll call vote on or need a motion, I'm sorry. Councilman Luber, second. Councilman Scribner. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scribner.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
In a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. We stand adjourned.